This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. I was glad when he said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Please be seated. A reading from Ecclesiastes, chapter 4, beginning at the 9th verse. 2 are better than 1. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls down and has no one to help him up. Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. Here ends the reading of God's holy word. A brief announcement before we begin today. Directly following today's service, MPower merchandise, pendants, t-shirts, jerseys will be on sale underneath the large window in the back of the chapel. In addition to that, we will have Livestrong bracelets, and any donation amount for them is acceptable. Many of you are familiar with the story of Mark Mandeville. It is one of sincerity, extraordinary perseverance in the face of cancer, and inspiring attitude. Alongside his family, his friends, and the Episcopal community, Mark was able to lead MPower, a Livestrong Challenge team, to the fundraising championship in 2010. Although Mark has left us, his story and his team live on. Our speaker today knows a thing or two about what it means to be a brother. Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. Pete Mandeville picked up the reins of Team MPower and with grace led a $40,000 comeback charge in the final few weeks to maintain MPower's team fundraising championship. I am privileged to introduce this year's MPower captain. Please stand to greet Mark's brother, Pete Mandeville.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please be seated. I like the Livestrong Day casual dress down. It goes in well with my office casual Friday back in Wilmington, so it works out well. Thank you, Connor. And as the scripture just stated, 2 is in fact better than 1. And while we're at it, 144 is better than 2. I can honestly tell you that in all the activities I've taken part in my 36 years, I have never seen the power of a team so strong as I did last month. In gathering my thoughts to share with you this morning, I had the chance to finally relax and look back on what we had done since January. I think those that participated last year knew for certain that MPower would in fact go on. That was never a question. Someone, if not me, then one of my family members, one of my brother's friends, or perhaps one of you sitting out here in the audience, would have picked up the reins and continued on with my brother's vision because he meant so much to so many of us. When the registration for Philly Challenge opened in January, I immediately signed up and registered MPower as a team. I knew right away that I could not do this alone. I knew that 2 would be better than 1. Therefore, I called on MPower's second team member, Scott Coleman, my brother's best friend, to be my co-captain in this venture. I knew right away that it was going to be a logistical and organizational monster that was going to grow from this. But it wasn't that scared me as much. I knew I would need Scott's help, and I knew he would need my help to get through this venture emotionally. So within days, I had received my first donation, and it came from a woman named Jen Yuan. Jen just so happened to be the captain of Team Fat Cyclist, the team that MPower had overtaken at the end of 2010 to become the team champion. You need to keep focused on the idea that despite being on different teams, all 5,000 plus walkers, runners, riders in the Philly Challenge, we're all focused on the same mission when we're raising funds. And that is to do all we can to eradicate cancer and put it on the shelf next to diseases like polio. Over the next few weeks, 2 teammates grew to 10, and then to 20. Couples signed up together. Families brought 3 and 4 team members to the table. There were veterans from last year. There were new faces to the team. There were friends that promised my brother, you know, we'll ride next year. They weren't about to renege on that promise this year. They were in. It was great to see the movement slowly taking shape. As a team grows, you gain depth. You gain knowledge, diversity, new ways of thinking, fresh new ideas, and ways of seeing things. Now, I'll grant you in some situations, too many is just that. It's too many. But not in this case. Not when the cause is as noble as ours. Not when you're guided by such a strong sense of commitment and a singular vision that was set forth by my brother over a year ago. As the summer went on, we reached a bit of a stall. We had clawed our way into the top 5 fundraising teams and were securely in second place by about $40,000. We were behind Team NBA, who was paced by the top fundraising individual in the country, Dave Wilson. Now, Dave was on a mission of his own this year. This year was Dave's 70-70-70 ride. He was going to turn 70 years old. He promised to ride 70 miles, and he pledged to raise $70,000. At this point in time, he had already had $80,000 raised. So after several attempts to spark the team fundraising, I was kind of settling into the idea that we unfortunately weren't going to repeat as the team champion. I was a little disappointed, but when I looked back at what we had already accomplished this year, I knew that Mark would be proud of what we had done. Not me, all of us, MPower. And I'm not just speaking about Live Strong. For those that may not be aware, Scott Coleman, myself, and Mark's wife Megan have started a nonprofit organization called the Mark Mandeville Foundation. This is another way that we will see my brother's legacy live on. We see this foundation as a combination of Mark's ambition and our visions. While we recognize that Live Strong does amazing things for so many people across the world, we don't always see that impact that we have. We don't see where those dollars are going that we're raising. So one of the key missions of the Mark Mandeville Foundation is to have more of a local and personal impact on the cancer community. And I don't just mean personal to myself, to Scott, or to Megan. I mean to anyone within MPower affiliation, anyone that we reach, anyone that knows about us. Now, granted, we're still we're a fledgling organization. We're still getting on our feet. But we've already made a donation to an MPower friend. She is battling cancer in Kansas right now, and our donation to her is going to help defray the costs of getting her back and forth to her cancer treatments. We've also made a donation to a local Delaware man who's fighting cancer himself. We sent him to Citizens Bank Park for a ball game. We saw this as a way for him to get cancer off his mind for one night. Forget about it and just spend the night watching the Phillies with his son. And he had a great time. So we hope to do more of things like this as the foundation continues to grow. And now for August. Something happened in August that I think only Mark himself could have seen. Because I look back on it now and I still can't believe that it happened. It began with several emails from a couple of EA students and veteran MPower members, Connor Boyle being one, and Allie Singley, who could not join us as she's crossing the border into Canada for a college for a hockey tournament. So good luck to her. They sent out emails through the community, and these emails of encouragement evidently had a profound impact. Because within a week, our team of 100 grew to 110, and then to 120. So with just a week to go, the real magic really took hold. This was epic. This was Red Sox coming back from down 3-0 over the Yankees in 2004 epic. On Tuesday, August 9th, we trailed Dave Wilson and Team NBA by over $35,000. Considering we were just over $70,000 ourselves, I had a hard time seeing how we were going to raise 50% of our total to overtake them. Evidently, I underestimated the power of 135 team members. On Wednesday, we raised $5,000. Good. On Thursday, we raised $5,000. Okay, where was this spark all during the summer? On Friday, we raised $6,000. Now you had my attention. Could we actually do this? Could we actually complete a comeback of $40,000 and repeat as team champions? I was becoming a believer. With a little over 2 days left, we were 20,000 out of the lead. My challenge was, how do I break this $20,000 into something digestible? How do I make this a less daunting objective for everyone? It turns out that if we got all 135 members to raise $150, we'd overtake them. $20,000, that's pretty daunting, but $150 is something you can wrap your hands around. Saturday brought an absolutely incredible $10,000 day. Quick calculation, $75 each to raise. The strength of a team comes from sharing the burden and executing your role to the best of your ability. Some members are inevitably stronger than others and will carry a little bit more of the load. The key is that all team members have the same vision and stay focused on the final goal. As I mentioned earlier, I've never been a part of a team that has shown such power and resolve towards reaching its final goal. On that last final day of fundraising, MPower raised over $13,000 and took the lead to win the 2011 Team Champion Award for the second year in a row. The next morning, I received an email from Dave Wilson of Team MBA. He was congratulating MPower on such an incredible finish to take the award. And this wasn't a half-hearted congratulation. This wasn't like a conciliatory speech of the losing political campaign when they have to call the winning campaign manager after the final votes are tallied. Dave truly meant this because he understands at the end of the day, we're on the same team with the same mission and the same vision. By the time the actual Live Strong event came, our team had peaked at over 144 walkers, runners, and riders. You couldn't throw a stone on the campus that weekend without hitting an MPower teammate or family member. It was great. Saturday brought a day of beautiful sunshine for the walkers and runners as it had the previous year. And unfortunately, as it had the previous year, Sunday brought torrential downpours for the riders out there on the 175, 45, and 20-mile course. I don't think, for myself, it didn't dampen my spirits, and I don't think it dampened a lot of your spirits. Because that weekend, we volunteered and walked and rode and ran for our family and friends that have been affected by this disease. And most of all, we did it for our captain, Mark Mandeville. At this time, I would like to recognize all our Team MPower participants. If you would all please rise, our runners, walkers, riders, and absolutely our volunteers, because that event does not happen without the hundreds of volunteers. Could you please rise and be recognized? Outstanding, absolutely outstanding job. Our final number, or as it sits right now, we ended the competition with $115,000. Right now we're at $141,000 raised for the year. Awesome. At the risk of making you late for your next class, I would like to share one more thought with y'all. I have read and I've also experienced that in the final days of some cancer fighters' lives, they experience a moment of clarity, if you will. It's a brief time where, despite their struggles and failing health, they return to being themselves. You see the spirit and liveliness and character that they live their lives with. The first time I heard of this, I was a very young boy, and I wasn't even quite sure what cancer was. All I knew was that my Uncle Joe was really sick. I remember my grandmother describing a day, an afternoon that he had had, where he sat up in bed, he temporarily got his appetite back, and he recognized all his grandchildren, kids that he previously was even too tired to even speak to. My grandmother described it as being one last special gift that he gave us. Last October, as my brother's health began to fail rapidly, I thought of the story my grandmother told. And at that point, my brother became more and more tired, to the point where he was sleeping more than he was awake. And all the way up to his final days, I kept waiting and waiting, hoping too that he would have that moment of clarity, hoping to see his true spirit and energy return for a brief moment. But it didn't happen, or so I thought. It wasn't until this past winter, when I could really start to process what had happened last September and October, that I realized he did have that moment. And it happened right here in front of all of you. The night before last year's Live Strong Chapel, Mark tried to write out notes for his address, but he was just too tired. He couldn't get clarity. He couldn't organize his thoughts to put some things down on paper. The next morning, I drove him from Wilmington up here to Newtown Square, and he desperately tried again to get some thoughts down. He kept dozing off. I had to keep rousing him. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know how to get here. So by the time we pulled up in front of the chapel, I looked at the paper, and he had 2 sentences written down. Just 2 sentences. I was scared. I was afraid that he was going to get up here in front of all of you, and he was just going to be physically unable to stand here and greet you and address you. He asked that I come inside, bring my parents, get them settled, and he went back. He said he was going to put down some notes. I thought for sure we'd be waking him about 10 minutes later as the service was about to start, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So I was surprised and extremely glad to see him come out from the altar just before the service, and he sat here, attentive and alert, looking upon all of you. He listened to the eloquent renditions of that year's Live Strong Challenge that were relayed by Connor and by Allie Singley. And then it was his turn, and I still feared for the worst, but he delivered his best. He recounted that weekend's events with the passion and clarity that I hadn't seen in months. We have a link to that video speech on our Empower Live Strong page. And I ask you to go back and watch that video and look how few times he actually looked down at his notes. I truly don't know if it was a full page of notes or just the 2 sentences that he had written on the way up here. He was speaking from the heart, in here, in front of so many people that meant so much to him, that meant the world to him. Our parents, his colleagues, his poker-playing buddies, friends, and certainly most of all, you, the students of EA. You brought out the best in him that day like you had so many days before. He called upon that positive attitude, that courage, that strength within him to deliver that address, and there's no doubt in my mind that he did it all for you guys. Mark had his last moment of clarity, and it was right here with all of you. Thank you very much for having me today. Continue to empower.